Hello, we are the Crystal Thems, a Steven Universe podcast, and we are here to save the day by doing a deep dive into every episode of Steven Universe. First things first, since this is our first episode, I'm one of the hosts. My name is Liz, and my co-host is Sid. Say hello, Sid.
Hi.
And today we're going to do a little intro of us and how we found Steven, and then do a deep dive into the Unaired Pilot, and technically the first episode of Steven Universe. If you are here, you should already know Steven Universe, but just in case you don't, here's a little synopsis. Steven is a coming-of-age story told from the perspective of Steven, the youngest member of the Crystal Gems, a team of magical guardians who protect the planet Earth. The animated series was conceived as part of the Shorts Development Initiative at Cartoon Network and is created by Emmy and Annie Award-nominated writer and storyboard artist Rebecca Sugar, Cartoon Network's first solo female and non-binary show creator. So just like us, they are a Crystal Them. Thank you for that little synopsis. That's from the Steven Universe Wiki because they're magical. Now, without further ado, let's make like Malachite and dive right in, only to ultimately get trapped underwater and do a deep dive of the show. So like I said, my name is Liz. I've been watching Steven, I don't know how long anymore, Sid. It's been a long time.
It's too long to count. We've all known Steven Universe deep in our hearts.
So
regardless of if the show was there or not. It's been there since the beginning.
So how did you come to find Steven?
I found Steven Universe because I was a huge fan of Adventure Time. And so any shows that the artists or any creative on Adventure Time, if they made a show, I was there to see it.
Rebecca was originally an artist.
Yes.
On Adventure Time, correct. Okay.
Rebecca previously was an artist on Adventure Time, and then I was Tumblr trash child. And when I found out that there was going to be another show about what seemed like magic lesbians, I was already on board. I needed no more information.
I wish that was the description I would have been given as magic lesbians, because I would have been like, all right, let's fucking go.
That's exactly what got me there. I was like, I don't need any more information. You mean it vaguely magic lesbians, but magical girl, but with an AMAB protagonist? Sign me up. You don't need to explain it. Just let me see. And
done.
From an artist from Adventure Time, I don't need more information.
Done. So have you been watching since like the start?
Yes, I started watching Steven Universe pretty early. I watched that, I think I was in high school at the time. So like me and my sister would watch it and we would constantly argue over the first season about theories we had. And it was great. I was right about a lot of them. She was wrong. It was so funny.
That's amazing.
We started this with me going, yeah, Garnet's a fusion. And she goes, absolutely not. And I was like, well, wait. And I was right.
I love that so much.
I was 1,000% right. And I hold that pride to this day.
So if you haven't noticed, this will be a spoiler-filled podcast. So if you have not watched Steven Universe, this might not be the podcast for you. Or at least watch it and then come back.
You know what? Yeah. You just watch every episode of Steven Universe, the movie, and the sequel show, and then get back to us.
To be fair, not too much of Future, because I'm still actually watching Future.
You're right. We'll get there.
So sorry. I'm working through it. I gotta watch it with my roommate, though. I'm on the flip side. I didn't start watching Steven until, oh gosh, like season 3 had already come out, because I didn't have cable of any sort. I didn't start watching until I was well into my 20s. It was literally one of my coworkers was like, hey, there's a show I think you'd really like. I have them all in iTunes. Like, do you want to watch this? I'm like, hey, it's really slow right now. Yeah, we're just going to stand at the registers and watch a show, and we'll stop it when... I'm not going to say where I work just because I don't get in trouble for the fact that I just watched TV when I was supposed to be working. So yeah, so I started watching it then, and I just thought it was really, it was adorable. I mean, the first few episodes are kind of goofy and they're a little hard to get into, but once you get going, it's like, oh, hell, this is like a really good show, and I really like this. And then Garnet was a fusion. I was like, what the fuck? Holy shit! And so, yeah, then I actually went to the New York Comic-Con panel for the movie back in 2019, I think is when I went to that panel. I don't know, time has no meaning. So, I got to watch the cast and Rebecca sing the songs and kind of like do a sing-along to the movie, which is funny because I hadn't watched the movie yet because I didn't have access to it. So I was like sitting along just happy to be there because it was Steven Universe. Yeah, it was great. It was fine. I mean, it wasn't hard. I've watched the movie and I enjoyed it after the fact.
So you said you joined in season 3, right?
Yeah.
So you joined in at like the height of the Steven Universe hiatus timeline.
I didn't know it was on hiatus because it took me a really long time to catch up because I didn't once like we didn't work like that person and I we'd only really watch it when like we were working and then I'd watch it. I found out it was on Hulu, but Hulu ended at like on season 3 and like season 4 had already started being released, but it was only on Cartoon Network and Cartoon Network is weird because they're like, we're only going to show you the first 15 minutes, then you got to pay. And I was like, no. So, I mean, it took me actually a long time to, I finally, I know this is going to like call me out. I feel like I finally actually finished watching the show during lockdown because it was all on HBO Max and I had access to HBO Max. So that's how I actually ended up watching it. And I remember I was sitting at my parents' house during lockdown and I was freaking out because, you know, like you find all this stuff out about Rose. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell? My mom's like, what is wrong with you? I was like, this show, Steven Universe, God damn it.
I binge watched the show again in quarantine because I wanted to see all of the little hints and nods towards the spoiler. In fact, we find out later on in the show at the very end of it that Rose is Pink Diamond.
Oh my, I lost it. Like,
and to be fair, that was one of my other theories. Again, I was 2 for 2 and I was like, I got it. I was right. I was wrong about some other things, but I'll take it.
That's impressive.
I got the 2 big ones. I think I still have the Tumblr post I made of me saying, I'm pretty sure Rose is just Pink Diamond and lied about dying. And I really want to go back to that and go, called it.
Called it. Yeah, I kind of picked that up because after the fact, after I got back home from staying at my parents, I forced my roommate to watch Steven Universe. She had no choice in the matter. I literally was like, we're watching this show and we're watching it right now. Well, she liked it, so it was fine. So then I got to see all like the little, same with Garnet, like there's these little things. And I was like, oh, like I didn't even catch that the first time through because a lot of times, very rarely, I mean, not very rarely, I'm pretty good at catching story beats, but some of the like background stuff I miss. I mean, I'm just saying spoilers for Game of Thrones. I guessed a huge spoiler, season 1 spoiler, the first episode. And my human was like, what the hell? And I was like, I don't know, it just seemed obvious to me.
It's a perk of ADHD. It's overanalyzing everything to the point that you're going to pick up on that subtext right away.
Right? So yeah, I, loved Steven, found it. I was listening to another podcast and was like, hey, I think a good podcast name would be Crystal Them. Sid!
Yes, for you viewers at home, my messages exploded with some information about the Crystal Thems and what it could be. And I was 1,000% on board.
All in capital letters, though. Like, nothing was just regular. It was all capital letters.
It was all caps. The sentences were broken up. It was excited, speedy typing. I was here for it.
Yeah, because I was driving. I literally got to work. I sat in my car for an extra, 5 minutes typing everything out. Be like, this is a podcast. We should do it. And now here we are. Gentle listeners, you're welcome. And a little bit about the name, obviously Crystal Gems, but also, I identify as non-binary. Sid is also identified as non-binary. So we're both thems.
We are thems. We are Crystal Thems.
So, just had to go to that. We had to be Crystal Thems. So kind of looking at the show from a queer point of view, because there's a fair amount of queer representation and some non-binary representation.
There is. We all aspire to be Shep. Or I do, at least personally.
I haven't met Shep yet.
The non-binary I want to be. The gender envy is real.
I think of definitely Stefani, I definitely think is definitely non-bibbery.
Stefani goes by they, them pronouns.
Yeah, so
Officially.
I love Stefani. Oh, officially, okay, so that's actually canon. It's not just in my head.
Yes, so after Steven Universe aired, there was a lot of supplementary material, the sequel show, the movie, but there were also shorts released on Cartoon Network television about characters, some about Black history, some about pride, gender affirmation, and one of the big ones they had was that Stevani uses they them pronouns. They use Stevani to explain to kids how they them pronouns work and that it's totally normal and just like everyone else.
Oh, I love that. I have not seen those. We had to hunt those down so we can do them as part of our little
Yes, they're very sweet
adventure through the show.
Pearl loses her mind over Black History Month. She's like, what? Why are you giving false information? You humans have such short lives. Don't lie. And I was like, oh, Pearl.
Okay.
Also, yeah, you were there for it, so I guess you do know what happened.
Okay. I will have to find those so we can watch them. Add them in.
There are a lot of very sweet episodes. They released around during Future's airing.
Okay. Yeah.
On Cartoon Network.
I'm now currently watching Future because it's on HBO.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
I love it. So should we go ahead and dive into this unaired pilot?
We can start with the pilot, the session 0, if you will.
Session 0. So I actually didn't know there was an unaired pilot until we started talking about doing this podcast.
I had seen the pilot on YouTube after I watched, I think, the first couple of episodes.
That's probably good because I didn't particularly like this Unaired Pilot. It was okay, but I think if I would have watched this first, I'd been like, I don't think I want to watch this show.
It is very much a pilot. It's a pitch, and I can tell. It's not it's good. The art style changes significantly,
Significantly.
and the characters also change significantly just in between the pilot and the first episode.
For sure. So the Unaired Pilot, the title is The Time Thing.
So the synopsis for this episode is Steven is given a magical time travel hourglass from Amethyst and does what any kid would do. He uses it for comebacks. But toying with magic draws trouble to his sleepy beach town, and Steven has to step up and save the day with more comebacks.
You know, when I read that synopsis originally, I was like, oh, did they just like rework it into the show? Because later there's also the time, like pretty much the same plot.
It is the exact same item, actually, from the pilot in another episode.
It is. And I think it's just called like the time or whatever, or the thing. It's not, it's like a part of the word.
Yeah, so in this episode, I believe it is called the thingy, but in the show, it is known as the hourglass.
Yeah. So I read that synopsis and I was like, did they just rework this episode into the show? They kind of did in its own weird way.
They did it with the much more standard American trope of clone yourself and then watch all of your clones die horrifically in front of you. You know,
Right.
standard American cartoon stuff.
Standard American cartoon. So this was written and storyboarded by Rebecca Sugar as kind of their pitch, and the art, like the background stuff, was done by their brother Steven, who is actually who Steven is named and created after. And I found that this originally was shown both on Rebecca Sugar's dad's YouTube and on Cartoon Network's website, which both have been like taken off, so they don't exist in those places anymore.
Yeah, since then they have definitely been taken down. Obviously for Cartoon Network for I'm assuming money reasons, and then for Rebecca probably taking it off. I don't want my pilot episode on my dad's YouTube channel.
Right, but it was released on those May 21st, 2013. So I mean, this show is almost this pilot is almost 10 years old. So this was a 10-year-old like show.
Yeah, it released, you said in 2013, and then I believe a couple months later, the first episode then airs.
Yeah, the first episode was officially released November 4th, 2013. So it was a couple of months, but I mean, that's pretty fast turnaround for a pilot.
That is. I think it also helped a little that Rebecca is a well-known name in Cartoon Network. Like, her content is good. The things she creates and the writing, the art style, all of it, very good.
Yeah, but I do have to say, so we kind of open up this pilot. It has a different opening than what we know. You know, the amazing song, which I love dearly. It's very dramatic.
It is. It's incredibly dramatic, honestly.
So dramatic. Because it opens up with Garnet. They kind of give a tease to Sapphire and Ruby because there are like mirroring on the two sides of Garnet. There's like a Ruby like setup that's all on fire, and then there's like a sapphire blue crystal formation that has water on it.
I did like that little nod that even in the beginning, Garnet was a fusion.
Right, yeah, that's kind of nice, but like their outfit's so different.
I will say I can understand the differences. The art style is incredibly detailed, too detailed for a show to consistently keep up.
It's also very Adventure Time. Like I realized that immediately. Like I watched it. If I would have seen this, I would have thought it was a Adventure Time spinoff.
Yeah, I think that was one of it's clearly drawn with Rebecca's previous Adventure Time experience. The details are a little too much for anyone to keep making that for every episode. Maybe smoother, softer lines.
Yeah. And plus they try to make the gems, I feel like, look more human than extraterrestrial. I mean, Amethyst looked like she saw one 80s movie and was like, I'm going to dress like an 80s teenager for the rest of my life. She has a fanny pack, Sid. There's a fanny pack.
This is also the only time the gems are ever shown with ears. Pearl even has earrings.
Pearl does it. That's because, you know, all of them have stars somewhere, and Pearl has star earrings.
They are definitely more humanoid.
But I mean, Garnet's straight hair, oh my god.
It's so weird to see.
It's so weird.
It's so confused. I saw it and I was like, this feels wrong.
It felt so, that was my note. I go, Garnet, straight hair. Holy shit, it's weird.
It feels very wrong.
Then we kind of go into Amethyst, who is for some reason in a cuddle pile with lions and a tiger. I wasn't really sure why, but I was like, all right. And then Amethyst like pulls down her shirt to show her crystal.
I'm like, oh, so this is what we're doing.
It's like Amethyst. I was like, what is happening right now? But the biggest one, because Amethyst and Garnet still kind of look like each other, like what makes the actual show. I mean, like I said, Amethyst looks like she will forever be an 80s teenager.
But that does look like something Amethyst would wear.
Right, it does. And Garnet, I mean, the outfits didn't change too much for them.
I will say I do enjoy the sort of geode look that Garnet had on her chest. Like that's cool. And they did keep it with Sapphire later on, but I enjoy that little like nod to like they're still rocks.
Right? I did too. And you'll also see up close that their gems have like placing. It's like a placement in them because it has like the ring around it. But the one that's the biggest difference is Pearl. Pearl looks like an androgynous boy girl person.
This is true. It looks so good, but it's so different from what we're used to.
I mean, they have like this vest turtleneck thing, and I was like, get it.
I
But
love
then
it.
they have these weird poofy like Shakespeare shorts.
It's very Pearl.
Very Pearl, but I mean the hair, because Pearl's classically has like the triangle behind their head. This one's like they got like a little poof. Very androgynous.
I do enjoy. I do also enjoy that this form does get nodded to every time Pearl reforms.
Yes, it does. Yeah, when she reforms, you do get a little like. I mean, same with I think Amethyst and Garnet. You kind of get the nods to them too when they start to reform. But
I think the only difference for Garnet is the hair stays square.
Pearl does the classic dancing, spinning in a circle, and then you get to Steven.
Sweet summer child.
Rips off his shirt and he has nipples.
It's so weird.
Which I was like, Steven, your nipples are massive, and it looks like you have a face on your belly. Like it looks like 2 eyes and a mouth.
I am willing to bet that Steven has 100% walked around shirtless going, its mouth is talking to you.
Oh, for sure. But he still has like the classic look. He has the red shirt with the star. I mean, his outfit stays the same the most.
I will say the biggest difference for Steven, at least, is he doesn't have his standard hair. He doesn't have the little 5-star hair.
Yeah, it's not poofy. It's pretty like mellow.
It's pretty average hair. Like I'm like, this just looks like a young boy.
Yeah, for sure. But he's like surrounded by garbage and stuff. I was like, Steven, where are you? Should we be worried about you?
Is someone gonna come get you? You should not be in the trash. Are you in a dumpster? Are you dumpster diving again?
Do we need to call someone to come and help you? But yeah, my thing just says he has nipples. That's what it says. He has nipples. Because that just distracted me the whole time.
Also, as an aside, the song that they do introduce is the extended version of the theme song, which I do love.
I did. I liked hearing the like little extra bit. Like that was really cool extra. So then they pan up, you see the temple looks very, very different.
Oh, it's incredibly different.
Yeah, the woman, like, the temple is like a woman.
It's actually obsidian.
Is it obsidian? I guess I never
It
actually
is
paid
the
attention that
obsidian
much.
with rose,
Oh, I don't know if I ever caught that. It's good to know.
which is super interesting to see.
Oh, it's very interesting
Like,
to
oh,
see.
this is what obsidian looks like with rose.
I have to go back and look because I didn't know that. But yeah, like there's a lot of detail in the hair, and you see there's like a stained glass, but like the house itself looks like a shack, like it's gonna fall down any second.
It looks too dangerous.
It looks way too dangerous for anyone to live in.
I will allow magical gem people to live there.
But a small child did no. We kind of get this fun, like, very different little Steven Universe intro. Then we go into the actual hut, which the house, very small, but I like the stained glass.
That is nice. It is a very different design.
So, but I do have to say, I wish they would have kept I liked the rainbow crystals around the warp pad.
That is nice. It's a nice little touch.
It's a great touch. It's gorgeous. But you see, like, looking at this, I feel like Steven has like a giant old school TV that I don't know how it's balancing on that little rickety.
Yeah, that little rickety loft for him is not.
But yeah, I mean, it's so detailed. I mean, there's like, because I have it paused right now, you can see an oven mitt hanging next to the stove. And like, like it's a stained glass little, like those you go into like old restaurants and there's like the stained glass lamps.
I will say, I do like that it's a rose stained glass lamp. That's also pretty cool.
Like, that's a really nice added bonus. But yeah, Steven's eating chips. He's on this little couch that I feel like is the size of Steven.
I know, from this perspective they gave us, it's the size of Steven, but when we get to it later, Pearl is sitting there perched pretty easily.
Yeah, with Amethyst.
And I'm like, okay, the size is a little inconsistent, but acceptable.
They keep the chips. Those are still kind of the same brand as before. So we get the gems beaming in, and I love that they pose. Like, I wish they would have just kept posing when they warp into places.
Every time they warp, it's for posing.
Like, that is, I mean, you are surrounded, but that is the perfect spotlight. Like, strike a pose, y'all. And they do. You got, like, Gar with a hand behind her head. Pearl's like, yeah. The arms down. Amethyst is leaning forward. But coming up next, because, they kind of come in, and they have this weird, like, Day of the Dead looking crystal like skull that's like screaming.
Yeah, it is a screaming skull with gems for eyes, which is kind of interesting because it doesn't have the same setting as their gems do. But I'm wondering if it's like a corrupted monster or one of the corrupted gems that we meet later.
Right, or at least, like, the first episode you get, like, the baby, so because it doesn't poof a gym, or if that was just a later concept that they thought of. But they talk about a crystal palace, and I'm like, "Okay, so originally was the crystal palace, like, something separate from the temple? Like, as their own home?"
I guess the gem, but I don't. Well, these gems I would believe would leave Stephen alone.
Oh, yeah, no, for real. They're a bit harsher.
But yeah, I guess they live separately in a crystal palace, not the temple, which I guess they change it to temple later on, but for now it's a palace.
Yeah, because the actual, like, official show, it's they go through the door, so it's still part of the home, but this, they, like, warped from it. So I'm like, "Oh, do you just live separately from Steven and he just, like, hangs out in this house by himself?"
Is Greg here? Does Stephen live by himself? I'm so worried.
Yeah, I think Steven just is, like, an unaccompanied minor everywhere.
Oh, that's not good.
So this part coming up soon, Amethyst pulls out the time thingy. You get, Steven wants it. Pearl's like, no. You get the classic Steven with the stars in his eyes, which always shows excitement. But so Steven at this part, I feel like is the most adventure time. Is the most adventure time that you get. Like his face and how he's animated.
Oh yeah, when Garnet puts her finger at his mouth, I'm like, that is a very Adventure Time face.
Yeah, because they're very much like very shows wrinkles, all that jazz. Very Adventure Timey.
I believe that face is used in Adventure Time.
I've never seen Adventure Time.
I will say Adventure Time, tangent, very good show for young children, especially young men, to teach them like, hey, no toxic masculinity. Here are healthy ways to deal with your issues. Actually, incredibly useful.
That's what I feel about Steven too, is that it's very much like, here's how you deal with your emotions. Like, it's okay to be upset. It's okay. And I think it's a great show for kids for that reason. It doesn't shy away from these like big emotions that a lot of shows do.
And it does a good job of explaining them in a way that's understandable for children.
For sure.
Like, hey, you're feeling this and it's okay. It's maybe not exactly the same, but it is analogous.
Yeah, it's great for that. So this is kind of where my qualms with this unaired pilot comes, is I feel like everyone, so in the regular show, the gyms are so supportive of Steven and so caring and so loving, and I feel like these are just, they're kind of mean to him.
They are a little mean. It's confusing, honestly.
Yeah, like Pearl calls him a clown.
I know. It's in the main show, they're objectively his guardians. They take care of him. He's got 3 moms. Whereas in this, it feels like they're babysitters who have to look after Steven, but are willing to like make fun of him.
Like they're saddled with him.
And it's real confusing because they're so mean.
Yeah. I that's kind of where I started being like, I don't know if because I'm not used to that, just them being kind of rude to Steven. But we still get the very classic of like Garnet's kind of the stoic, unofficial leader, guardian of all of them. Pearl is very matronly in a way.
I will say this Pearl strikes me as different because she's not as matronly. Like she's not as worried about Steven. It's not the anxiety bird mom.
Right. I mean, she's still like, oh, like that would be foolish to do that or whatever. Like you can't do that.
Yeah, she has like rational thought of like, don't get hurt, but I'm gonna laugh at everything.
Right. I'm still going to call you a clown. Amethyst is still a gremlin.
Amethyst continues to be a gremlin, and that does not change until later in the show. And even then,
Right, like we still got major gremlin vibes. So that, they kind of tease Steven. Then Amethyst is like, here, why don't you go get his donuts? And is the least obvious I think I've ever seen someone try to be. Like, I'm gonna sit quietly for 2 seconds, look at my hand, look at you. Like, Jesus, Amethyst.
Amethyst, you're not being subtle. I'm surprised. I think Garnet knew.
Yeah, I feel like from the start they kind of give that. I think that's why, it's like, don't make fun of Steven. Those kind of lines, because Garnet still seems like it has her future vision. But yeah, still a gremlin. Like, Jesus Christ, Amethyst.
Peak gremlin.
So we get sent over to the Big Donut, which is just across the way.
Yeah, it is significant. He walks down the stairs and across the street.
And it's right there. Right there. Right outside the building, there's a ad for a burger donut.
It sounds pretty American.
Which looks like 2 donuts as buns for a burger. It looks horrifying.
I think I have seen that before.
That is horrifying. Ew, gross.
Like 2 glazed donuts, but as buns. I think I've also I've definitely seen a burger that's like a bacon cheeseburger, but with donuts for buns. And I looked at it and I went, that looks like it hurts.
That looks gross. We get in there. Lars has black hair.
Lars for sure dyes his hair.
Sadie looks the same. I feel like there's no really
Sadie's
character
like
change with Sadie.
taller, which
A
is
little
interesting.
taller, but like overall the same general. Right off the bat, this Lars, I mean, the Lars in the show is a bully, but God, this one is
Even
mean.
then in the show, he's less of a bully and more just like an angry teenager. Like he doesn't want to hang out with people. He's not like, you're not cool. I got to hang out with the cool kids. But he's never overtly rude, and when he is, it's immediately dealt with.
Right, yeah, this one, I mean, his first lines is, "Oh, it's Steven from the Crystal Femmes."
Also, that too. Why is Lars a misogynist? Why?
Immediately going after like Steven's masculinity, and usually like, and Steven responds to it, which that's even be like, "What do you mean?" Like, whatever.
Steven genuinely wouldn't understand. The best part about the other show is that he genuinely doesn't understand the concept of being mean, which is so sweet.
Right. I mean, and he's, me like, "Grr," like, and I was like, oh my God, these guys are kind of horrible to each other. Which I heard on an interview that Rebecca and Steven did that originally the crystal gems were going to be very much like magic girls, to where they are going to have a human persona. And then when trouble came about, they would like magic girl into their gem selves. So that was kind of the original idea, but then that kind of got scratched because Rebecca was told, keep it simple. You're overcomplicating this. And I'm really glad it didn't go that route.
I am too. I really would have been concerned about them having to have double lives.
Yeah. It would have taken away the show. But I mean, obviously in the pilot, the regular show, they don't really acknowledge the gems a lot.
I will say in the regular show, they don't talk about the fact that these gems, everyone knows that they're aliens. And they look like aliens with magical powers, and they've definitely been here in recorded history for thousands of years. How has that shaped society?
They're just there. Like, no one really, it's like, okay, yeah, you exist. It's not like a big deal. It's not something someone's like, "Mer."
It's so weird to me because I'm like, no one's gonna bring up. I understand no one in Beach City is bringing up, but no one in the world.
Yeah, I have that note. It's like, oh, this is normal. And when I watched the first episode, I was like, the first official episode, it's like, no one's gonna question that. Like, okay, all right, cool.
They go to other cities and everyone's like, yeah, totally normal. Flying water gem person, Pearl, totally normal.
Oh, okay, this is fine. I feel like this scene especially really shows the details that the Unaired Pilot has, because in the regular show, the donuts mostly just like general circle shapes, all one color. And the Unaired Pilot, I mean, you have donuts with sprinkles on it of like different colors. You have bear claws. You have jelly-filled donuts.
They are all different. And even the animation of like the donuts moving whenever Lars grabs a donut, it's very clear that there was a lot of detail put into this.
Yeah, so and the store itself, I mean, there's an ATM and a travel poster for looks like maybe Hawaii. There's trash can with trash can. Like, it's so much detail.
There is a lot of detail.
Which I can't imagine trying to do this show over and over and over again with that much detail.
Yeah, I can understand it. A lot of the shows, like especially for kid shows, get simplified because if there are going to be so many episodes, you have to make it easy, not only for the animators, but for the artists, anyone who has to do any kind of art on that. It's going to be a nightmare to animate that consistently.
Yeah. So then we get another just discussing grouping of the dog nut, which is a hot dog with 3 donuts on it and then mustard on top.
So no bun, just the hot dog wiener and then 3 donuts as buns.
Like, that would have been fine, but then you add the mustard on top, just like, ew. Like, disgusting.
Again, gross American food.
Gross American food. But yeah, then you get Lars's, like, oh, he asks if the crystal gems are witches or ghosts, and Steven's like, no, they're, magical things that protect us all. Like, and I am too. And Lars goes, aren't they all just hot girls? Like, come on, Lars. Like, that's, ugh.
Also, that definitely does point to the concept of them having magical girl personas, because Lars doesn't know them as crystal gems, just as hot girls.
Exactly. I was like, oh, why do we have to okay, this is the thing we decided to do.
I'm glad we changed this.
Very glad. So yeah, Steven gets mad, walks out, does the thing that all of us do where you come up with a really good thing to say after you've already left and exited the conversation.
And it's too late.
And then you think of the perfect comeback. Except what happens, Sid?
Except this time, when you come up with the perfect comeback, a magical hourglass sends you back in time to exactly that moment, and you get to do the comeback and not think about the fact that you just time traveled.
Yeah, we're not going to We're not going to talk. We won't talk about the time travel wibbly wobblies of it all. Steven responds with, "Well, if I was a hot girl, I wouldn't be talking to you."
Ouch.
Yeah, like that's very un-Steven like harshness. Of course, Lars gets mad because you're a joke. You're just a joke. You're screaming at like a 13-year-old child.
But I think this Lars is, at least, I don't know if the Lars is the same age where he's like 15. I'm like, that's not, he seems younger, which isn't super different. Like, Lars is pretty young. I think by the end of the show, the original one, he's 16 years old.
I think so, yeah, 16, 17. But like, just starts screaming about how he's a joke. And of course, Steven leaves mad again. And then once again, like I said, like we all do, we think of the perfect comeback after we've left. And what happens, Sid?
Steven again goes back in time, doesn't think about the time travel, just says the comeback and goes on with his life.
The comeback is, "It must be tougher for you, Lars. At least people like jokes."
Just, oh, ouch.
That is
Boom, roasted twice.
twice. I was like, that is so harsh. Oh my God.
It's so very harsh.
Also, I love that they don't notice the fact that Steven already has like 2 bags of donuts in his hand.
I know. I saw that. I'm like, is he creating more
He just like
donuts?
keeps grabbing donuts.
My brain immediately got stuck on physics, so I was like, that's not. How is that working? Where are
My brain
you?
got stuck on his. I wish I had that many donuts.
I mean, I would also love that many donuts, but where is this matter coming from? Are you making matter out of nothing, Steven? What are you doing? You're gonna break time.
No one questions it. So we get back to the gyms. We find out that, Steven tells a story. Pearl, of course, is like, "What? We've been protecting these things for thousands of years. Amethyst, what'd you do?"
If you've been protecting it for that long, you should know better not than to give it to Amethyst.
Right, like, come on. You know Amethyst by now. You find out that it is, once it's turned on, it imprints and can only be used for one purpose, which is
Comebacks.
Steven's comeback. So it only works for Steven.
Steven, that's true. One person and for whatever use they gave it, which is comebacks.
So great, love it. Of course, Garnet's like, something bad's gonna happen. Something does. A giant version of the Sugar Skull shows up with flapping hair, but it's like metal because they have like leather-studded bracelets on the ends of their hair.
This one does actually have the same gem setting, but it does only, I believe, it doesn't act as a gem.
Yeah, it like has powers. I feel like a lot of the like gem hybrids didn't really have. I mean, the gems had powers, but I feel like the hybrids really didn't have powers.
I believe this creature was called the, what was it, Electric Skull.
I believe you're right. If I looked deeper in my notes, I've kind of been skimming them as we go along.
It's also, when we see that skull, we also do see the side of the house, which shows all of their gemstones.
Yes, you're right.
It has the ruby and sapphire on the hands, a little amethyst on what looks to be the chest area, and then another rose quartz. And then the pearl one isn't even like in that grouping. It's off on the head of the statue.
Yeah, so they definitely like had thought that out. You're right. I didn't catch that the first time around. That they had set it kind of where the gems actually belong.
Which I think is pretty interesting to just put it that this is where on a body the gems belong. And all it makes me think is that if they go into the temple, into the right areas, it becomes a mech suit. That's all I was thinking when I saw that. I was like, I want it to be a mech suit so bad.
Oh, that'd actually be pretty dope. I wonder if those are also like where their rooms are. If this is the temple, if that's where their rooms are, and those are just like little stained glasses looking out.
That would make sense. Pearl's room is so far from everyone else.
So far, they're like, "Pearl, you have to go up there." And Pearl also apparently has a satellite dish attached,
I guess that was added on for Steven so he could have his cable.
so you could have his cable on the giant TV that weighs 1,000 pounds. Because I have a TV just like that in my room, and it weighs 1,000 pounds.
And it's also right next to his bed. That's gotta be bad for his eyes.
It's so bad for his eyes. Like he's gonna go blind in no time.
He's got magic healing powers. He's good.
He does. Well, maybe this Steven doesn't.
We don't know what his powers. He honestly doesn't show any.
He shows 0 powers. He just uses the time thingy. So, all the gems run out. You get the pretty harsh line from Garnet where she calls Steven a butt face.
I know. It's part of me is like, was that to be harsh, or is it because Garnet knows now that Steven can time travel with comebacks?
When I first watched this, I was like, "Oh my God, what the fuck? Like, what the hell, man?" But once I saw it the second time, I was like, "Oh, like she knew it. He had to think of a comeback to warn them."
Yeah, so setting up like a emergency button of if something happens, you can come back and say something to me, and I'll go, "Oh God, what happened?"
Right. So we do get after that we do get a very magic girl moment where each gym kind of summons her weapon. So Pearl still has the same like spear coming out of her forehead, which is pretty dope. You know, extends. You know, you get like
It's a
the
little bit shorter. It feels less like a spear and more like a sword.
I think it extends.
Oh, does it?
It comes out short, and then when she, like, flicks it down, it extends out. Because that does it in the first episode, too. If you watch when she pulls out the weapon in the first episode, it does the same exact thing where it's, like, short, and then she whips it down. I think they probably just got sick of doing that. So our 80s baby pulls out her whip, and then I actually like Garnet gets, like, infinity gauntlets pretty much.
The golden gloves are cool, and the way they're summoned is also cool, where like rings of like purple light fire above her hands, and then they slide down.
Hot.
I will also say I do enjoy that whenever they summon their weapons, the gem doesn't glow, but the gold around it does.
It does, and kinda emanates that, like, colored light that matches their gem.
Which I think that's super cool.
It's awesome. This is
Too
also so
detailed.
when you go to Steven can't do his stuff, but if you look, they're not by a beach. Like, the temple is just in the middle of a field.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, they're nowhere near a beach. Also, why is there a donut shop then in the middle of a field?
I would like to know that myself because even fields need donuts, okay?
This is definitely a place to launder money.
I mean, it's probably Lars. Lars definitely launders money. But I do say Steven Till has like super strength because, you know, they go to attack, Pearl gets thrown down, Amethyst kind of gets thrown away. He picks up Sadie and Lars and moves them to side, and then he picks up Amethyst and then he picks up Pearl. So obviously he has some abilities.
You still have like the innate ones that can't be.
Yeah, that don't go. I mean, that's like, you know, that's something. He's not completely useless, guys.
Yeah, it's less about having a gem and more about being physically a gem, or at least part gem.
Yeah, and so, you know, he's like, Garnet, are we doing good? And Garnet's like, no, dumbass. We're losing. You have to help. And that's when Steven realizes that Garnet called him a butt face, so he needs a comeback. So he goes through a few. The first one says, I know you are, but what am I?
Which nice. I don't know. Did you see the movie?
I have seen the movie, yeah.
Which it's a very nice callback to or call forward to the ending line we get in the Steven Universe movie where he's fighting with that white diamond, and where now he says, "I can't help it. What's your excuse?" Instead, it's "I'm just a kid. What's your excuse?" Which I think is like a same vibes. Immediately the same vibes.
Definitely same. I'll have to watch that again because I didn't catch that, but I like that. And he come up with something better with my butt clothes. I was like, I don't know how that was a comeback, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, it works. It's also so sad. It's the beginning of the Steven trauma because he's crying while doing this and too stressed out to think of a funny comeback when he's trying to keep his friends from dying.
I know. Poor Steven just always gets freaking trauma.
The little trauma boy. Just wait till you get to Future. There's a whole thing.
Oh my gosh, I believe it.
It's actually a really healthy episode about therapy.
I haven't got to that point yet, but I've definitely seen he still gets even more trauma, which it's like, oh, buddy, you get a neck and more trauma. So finally, the comeback he lands on is, I can't help it. What's your excuse? And that's like you said, that's a call forward to, I'm a kid. What's your excuse? So then we get poofed back to being called a butt face, and Garnet's like, what happened?
And Steven, he does a good job immediately shoving everyone out of the way and like flips onto the roof of the big donut.
Yeah.
Which is very agile and weird. Like, is that his flight powers kicking in, or is that a thing Steven just knows how to do?
I feel like it was maybe like like a super strength, just like one of those weird innate.
Because Steven can fly.
He can.
Which I guess, well, he can glide. Rose could fly.
He kind of glides, but he calls everyone up onto the big donut where there's this like giant light up donut. And he's like, we have to push this over.
Just gotta trap the skull.
And like all good shows, the donut saves the day.
Truly, donuts are the thing that save us.
Traps the skull. I'm not really sure what this skull's powers were because at one point, like, so it calls down lightning. For those who haven't watched it, calls down lightning. It like electrocutes Pearl, but then like Garnet rips off part of the hair, and then it calls light. I was like, is the lightning good or bad? Because then when they trap it in the donut, the lightning destroys it.
I think the skull itself, it's because it's called the electrical skull, so I think it can call lightning and like attack with that. But the donut is also electrical because it did light up, so maybe it was too much electricity, and
that's true. It kind of like caught it.
Yeah, I guess it can't get touched by electricity.
Oh, like it electrocuted itself.
Yeah, like it can control it, but it can't be attacked by it. I mean, in the same way, if I could control electricity, I still probably shouldn't get electrocuted.
That's fair. I was like, how does this work? So yeah, then Steven goes, I wish I could have told you all that this clown would have saved you this morning.
Which, Steven, that's a comeback.
Yes, it is.
Also, the look on his face when he returns, it's as if he's aged 30 years right there.
He kind of has. So, yeah, he tries to hide it, and then he looks so tired.
He looks so broken.
I just paused it, and he looks horrified. Absolutely just like a broken shell of a man.
It's so not fair. And then immediately afterwards, he shatters the hourglass.
Which I was like, Steven, why didn't you do that before it bamfed you back?
No, I think he just panicked. And Amethyst and Pearl are like, what's going on with you? Also, it's weird. Pearl said that they'd been protecting that for thousands of years, but he just shattered it in front of her, and she's like, that's cool.
Yeah, no response. Like, oh, okay. And he goes, you're our clown. It's like, what? Do we not care?
I know. I'm like, Steven, you literally you had a whole experience. Talk about therapy, baby. Or at least talk to your friends about your traumatic experiences so that they can support you when you go through trauma.
Nope, can't have that. Then we have a callback to the beginning when Garnet says, don't make fun of Steven. And Steven says, yeah, because I'm going to save you.
And it's like, well, you won't now. Actually, Steven, how are you going to save them? Because it's definitely coming back, and you don't have...
I guess he would know what happened or how to beat it.
I guess he would know, so he could warn them and say, hey, deal with this.
Right. And that is how the pilot ends, is Steven saying he is going to save them with no use of any of his powers.
Oof. Yeah, that is the end of the pilot episode. And I gotta say, I do love the art style. It's very pretty. And I love the backgrounds, which were done by Rebecca's brother, Steven.
You know, I guess if I watched Adventure Time, I'd probably appreciate it more. But since I've never seen it, I've only seen like clips from Adventure Time. But I don't know, I also kind of like the childishness of the actual show.
Oh, I prefer the actual show, but I enjoy how aesthetic.
Oh, seeing a little different. It was really cool seeing how it originally was thought of. A lot of this stuff was stuff that Rebecca had been working on for years, just like sketching this stuff up for years.
Which is super cool to see, like, finally come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad because Cartoon Network approached them about it, about doing pitching a pilot. And so their thought was, what thing would I never get bored of, which was their brother.
Yeah, I believe Cartoon Network approached them to create a pilot for, what was the name of the program again?
Shorts Development Initiative.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder, were they going to plan to release these as just shorts instead of full-length episodes?
I mean, they kind of are shorts.
Yeah, that's true. They're very short episodes.
I mean, the Unaired Pilot, despite us talking about it for a while, was only 7.5 minutes long. Most of the episodes are 11 to 15. I think the longest is maybe 30 minutes, but those are like some of the bigger ones.
True, and I think those are more back-to-back than...
Yeah, mostly they'd show 2 episodes back-to-back. So like episode 1 and 2 were in November 4th, 3 and 4 were like the 13th. So they kind of used them to fill in some like little, spaces.
So yeah, I guess this is when Cartoon Network started doing their shorter episodes, and this was the pilot of that program.
I mean, I gotta respect it. It's hard to fit in an entire episode in 11 minutes to have like a beginning, middle, end, and actually tell a really interesting story.
It is very condensed, but not in a way that feels rushed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of the episodes feel short to me when I watch them. They all feel like they take 30 minutes.
Yeah, it feels like a pretty long show, especially with the amount of information you're given.
So much information. And I mean, we'll talk about that more as we get to later episodes, but you are given a ton of exposition pretty fast.
I will say I do enjoy that style of exposition and sort of world building where it's less of an explanation and more of a, this is the world, we all live in it, let's move on.
Yeah, but I think they do a really good job, which I have more notes on if we get into the first few episodes. They do a really good job of using the townspeople as kind of like stand-ins for the audience.
Yeah, definitely.
So, they like ask these questions that were like, what? And, we're thinking these questions, and then they ask the questions, which I think is a really good use of not making it just one big monologue. But I mean, the big one that comes to mind, which I'll talk about more when we get there, is, I mean, the second episode where it's Greg talking about how he met Steven's mom and kind of a little bit about that. Like, you find out a little bit more about his background while they're talking and doing things.
Exactly. And I very much enjoy that sort of it doesn't feel as if things slow down. So there's never a dull moment. There's never a moment where I'm worried like, okay, can we move this along? It's always interesting and something is happening. Even if it's not a huge battle, there is always something to be seen. Whether it's an emotional moment or some cool world building or just Garnet being cool as hell in the background.
Garnet's always cool as hell in the background.
Just in the back, being the coolest person in the room. And I'm like, you're so cool.
So damn cool. But yeah, that is the first official episode of Crystal Thems. As of right now, the plan is this will be a bi-weekly podcast. So please tune in.
So yeah, make sure to check us out online. You can find us at Crystal Them Pod on Twitter, and we hope to see you there.
You'll also find on our Twitter our release dates for everything.
So once again, thanks for listening, and we hope to see you later.